Well, good evening, everyone that's here. Oh, we're getting our pictures taken in the room as well. Thank you for doing that as well. Hi, everybody online. I think you can see me, everybody that's online. We've got a great special event for us once again at this monthly event, the Project Value Equation. So strap in, prepare yourself for yet another good program. You know, the third Wednesday of every month, you have a choice as to where you are. You have chosen to be here with us. And I'm hopeful that the volunteers have yet again prepared a nice program and event for you to enjoy and enrich yourself as we work on helping you get from where you are to where you'd like to be in your professional career. So that's the mission of this chapter here. We're going to have an interactive session with the speaker today at the speaker's request. For people in the room here, this room is microphoned up really at a pretty high quality, okay? I will ask that, like me right now, you project as you participate later on in the program. Hi, folks online. No matter how hard you shout at home, we're not going to hear you here. So that's no worries, but we're going to rely on the chat feature in Click Meeting. So get your fingers on those keyboards there, test that out, make sure chat's working okay, because our speaker will monitor the chat for your contributions at home, at the office, wherever you happen to be. All right, let's get on with some announcements. Okay, clicker. Clicker work. We tested the clicker. Today's sponsor, we have a corporate sponsor today, Progio. Progio is the Adaptive Project Portfolio Management Solution. We thank Progio for hosting this. These types of corporate sponsorships are available for other meetings as well, so note that. We have a big, not quite an announcement here, big plans for August over here. So, ProDev Day, August the 22nd. The venue style will be a watch party at Fort Benjamin Harrison. It's a full day event, different than the half day events we've had before, different that it's going to be partly virtual in terms of the speakers will be virtual, but there's this location here at the watch party where you'll have networking availability as well as a job fair event after the watch party. Okay, registration is now open with $180, a sizable discount off the full price. So if you're interested, think about this, hold the date, get onto the registration. Shorter term basis, there's the chapter monthly meetup that's coming up on June the 27th. That's a week from tomorrow here at the Garage in Indy. Typically, this is the fourth Thursday of the month, but we're going to change the schedule for the next couple of months. You'll see this a couple of times here. No meeting in July. It'll be a little bit later in August. The one to worry about now is, hey, maybe if the weather's nice, a week from tomorrow, you can see people at the Garage in Indy. Free appetizers, free parking. That's the really important stuff that's there. We would like to welcome 26 new chapter members here. Rounds of applause here. Do you happen to have any new chapter members in the audience here? Hey, congratulations. Stand up and say your name really loudly because we can test the acoustics in the room that way too.
Hello, my name is Amanda Brown.
Thanks, welcome Amanda Brown. New chapter member. Okay, at home you have to do this in the chat, so we're just starting to put this into practice here. We also have 7 members that were able to add these letters after their names, so congratulations to Nerd Certified Project Manager. We have 13 Project PMI chapter members that are celebrating anniversaries. Note that one there in the upper left corner there, Katie Graves, 25 years. Yeah, that's wow. And hey, William and Dale, you know, if it wasn't for Katie up there, we'd be acknowledging that 20 years is a long time too as well. Thank you for your continuing support of this PMI chapter. Congratulations on these longevity benchmarks. A couple of other announcements. I already talked about the meetup one that's there. I talked about the sponsor packages. Oh, do you know you can do, if you're a member of a firm that's looking to hire project managers, you can actually exercise a free job listing on the PMI website there. So that's at pmicse.org. The board of directors meets on a monthly cadence and their meetings are open. So just wanted to let you know it's the first Wednesday of the month at 6:30. If you have things to even suggest or contribute, that would be a good forum for that. For those 26 new people or any other new people that we happen to have with us, make certain that you selected to renew your chapter membership automatically on your PMI membership so you don't miss out accidentally the way I did my first year. We do have a YouTube channel for the chapter in which these events in the history could be seen via that YouTube channel. Please join that and subscribe, and there will be a survey after tonight's event here, less than 60 seconds to be able to take about 7 or 8 different questions there, which we use as feedback in planning the future events. So thank you very much for that. A couple of other things, we're getting into the summer season here, so some things are kind of changing from a scheduling standpoint. No monthly chapter meeting in July because it's taking the summer month off, or August because there's that Pro Dev Day type thing that's going on there. The August meetup is being moved to the 5th Thursday to August the 29th, so that will probably be advertised during Pro Dev Day as well. Have a great summer vacation, and then the next one of these types of events, this style, will be happening in September. All righty, and then with that, it's now time for a word from the board. Oh, and we have with us our Vice President of Communications, Kelly Saint.
Hi.
From here.
Oh,
okay. Well, you can, got the camera in the back room. There.
Okay.
It's actually showing.
All right, great. Juneteenth, celebrated annually on June 19th, also known as Freedom Day, commemorates the practical end of slavery in the United States. So thank you all for being here on a holiday. I'm really glad that in the last few years, Juneteenth is starting to get the attention and recognition that it deserves as an honored day in our country. One of the best ways I've learned through my research to kind of celebrate and honor this holiday is to reflect and share on the history that brought us here in order to promote continued shared understanding of this important day. So I'm going to be donating my time slot tonight to our friends at TED Ed. We're going to watch a short video that they put together. Does a really good job of explaining kind of the complex history behind Juneteenth and what you probably didn't learn in school. I learned something from this video, and I guarantee that you will as well. So enjoy.
One day, while hiding in the kitchen, Charlotte Brooks overheard a life-changing secret. At the age of 17, she'd been separated from her family and taken to William Nealon's Texas plantation. There, she was made to do housework at the violent whims of her enslavers. On that fateful day, she learned that slavery had recently been abolished, but Nealon conspired to keep this a secret from those he enslaved. Hearing this, Brooks stepped out of her hiding spot, proclaimed her freedom, spread the news throughout the plantation, and ran. That night, she returned for her daughter, Tempe. And before Nealon's spiteful bullets could find them, they were gone for good. For more than 2 centuries, slavery defined what would become the United States. From its past as the 13 British colonies to its growth as an independent country. Slavery fueled its cotton industry and made it a leading economic power. 10 of the first 12 presidents enslaved people. And when U.S. chattel slavery finally ended, it was a long and uneven process. Enslaved people resisted from the beginning by escaping, breaking tools, staging rebellions, and more. During the American Revolution, Vermont and Massachusetts abolished slavery, while several states took steps towards gradual abolition. In 1808, federal law banned the import of enslaved African people, but it allowed the slave trade to continue domestically. Approximately 4 million people were enslaved in the U.S. when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Lincoln opposed slavery, and though he had no plans to outlaw it, his election caused panic in southern states, which began withdrawing from the Union. They vowed to uphold slavery and formed the Confederacy, triggering the start of the American Civil War. A year into the conflict, Lincoln abolished slavery in Washington, D.C., legally freeing more than 3,000 people. And 5 months later, he announced the Emancipation Proclamation. It promised freedom to the 3.5 million people enslaved in Confederate states, but it would only be fulfilled if the rebelling states didn't rejoin the Union by January 1st, 1863. And it bore no mention of the roughly 500,000 people in bondage in the border states of Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri that hadn't seceded. When the Confederacy refused to surrender, Union soldiers began announcing emancipation. But many southern areas remained under Confederate control, making it impossible to actually implement abolition throughout the South. The war raged on for 2 more years, and on January 31st, 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. It promised to end slavery throughout the U.S., except as punishment for a crime. But to go into effect, 27 states would have to ratify it first. Meanwhile, the Civil War virtually ended with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee on April 9, 1865. But although slavery was technically illegal in all Southern states, it still persisted in the last bastions of the Confederacy. There, enslavers like Kneeling continued to evade abolition until forced. This was also the case when Union General Gordon Granger marched his troops into Galveston, Texas on June 19th and announced that all enslaved people there were officially free and had been for more than 2 years. Still, at this point, people remained legally enslaved in the border states. It wasn't until more than 5 months later, on December 6, 1865, that the 13th Amendment was finally ratified. This formally ended chattel slavery in the U.S. Because official emancipation was a staggered process, people in different places commemorated it on different dates. Those in Galveston, Texas, began celebrating Juneteenth, a combination of June and 19th, on the very first anniversary of General Granger's announcement. Over time, smaller Juneteenth gatherings gave way to large parades, and the tradition eventually became the most widespread of emancipation celebrations. But while chattel slavery had officially ended, racial inequality, oppression, and terror had not. Celebrating emancipation was itself an act of continued resistance, and it wasn't until 2021 that Juneteenth became a federal holiday. Today, Juneteenth holds profound significance as a celebration of the demise of slavery, the righteous pursuit of true freedom for all, and a continued pledge to remember the past and dream the future. People resisted slavery in the U.S. as long as it persisted, uncovered the story of those who escaped slavery, and created a secret society in the Great Dismal Swamp with this video. Or learn about the incredible courage of Harriet Tubman with this video.
Right. Thank you, Kelly. It's now time that we segue into the primary portion of tonight's event here. Our copyright disclaimer slide, of course, we start with that. PMI members determine that honesty, responsibility, respect, and fairness are key values that drive the ethical conduct for our practice, for our professions. Let's practice those things. All work presented here this evening is the intellectual property of the presenters. Therefore, views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by such speakers belong solely to those speakers, not necessarily those of PMI or PMI CIC, and any unauthorized reproduction or distribution of copyrighted work is illegal and punishable under federal law, so you know that I always say don't do that. We will ask the speaker if there's any way to share the content, because instead of a slide deck, we're going to see a different tool that's used in the presentation here today. And that will be brought to you by this person here. Tonight's special guest speaker is an author, coach, and a trainer in the world of modern management. He has mentored thousands of technology professionals across 13 countries to improve their teams and companies using agile methods. He founded the original PMI Agile Community of Practice, co-created the PMI ACP Agile certification, co-authored the software extension to the PMBOK Guide. His industry contributions have earned him an IEEE Computer Society Golden Core Award. He journaled his global experiences in the handbook, Can You Hear Me Now?, working with global distributed virtual teams. Today, he specializes in helping agile leaders and professionals reap the rewards from transforming their chaotic, overcommitted workplace, allowing them to produce the best results of their careers. Presenting today to us in an interactive fashion, so remember, on chat, for those online in the room, raise of hands, and then just project the project value equation, and Jesse Fuel, our guest speaker.
Wow. I am so honored by that introduction that I completely scripted for your host. I'm super excited to be here with all of you project people. You all are my people, and I'm eager to talk through some important considerations when it comes to leading projects. And we're hopefully going to expand our perspective and maybe add a few tools to our toolkit. I want to do a quick tech check to make sure that we are indeed seeing the project value equation here on the screen with the pluses and the minuses icon.
Not saying the screen share just yet.
All right. Perhaps I should reshare.
Yes.
Bum, bum, bum. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, so very quickly, I want to introduce you to a whiteboard. We're going to be using this whiteboard today as our canvas for ideas, and we are going to do our best to make this as interactive as we can, given the hybrid meeting format. So those of you online, we are going to be encouraging you to type some of your thoughts in the chat window, and then Rich is going to make sure that those of you that are in the room get a chance to shout out some thoughts that also get captured here. So we're going to talk today about the project value equation, and I've got really an opening thought here. Does anybody know what this is? In the chat window, I'm curious, has anybody seen this aircraft before? Maybe somebody in the audience, in Indy.
Sprucey looking.
Yeah, it's sprucey looking. That's right. Matt and Steven and Kenneth online, they got it. Gary, I'm sure, is typing the same thing right now. It is the Spruce Goose, ladies and gentlemen. And the Spruce Goose is famous because eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, if you saw the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, you know all about it, built what was called the H-4 Hercules, the largest aircraft ever built at the time. And it was $250 million in today's money, and it lasted a total of 20 seconds in the air. The original intent was that this was going to be a military transport vehicle. It would transport tanks and troops. And this photo doesn't do justice to the size. That wingspan is over a football field long. It's an impressive project that yielded zero impact. It never was deployed. It was never produced, manufactured in scale. In fact, this demo that you see here was 2 years after the war ended. And yet, according to the museum that hosts it today, it still holds the record for the largest seaplane, the largest wooden aircraft. It's called the Spruce Goose because it's made out of wood, and the largest propeller plane ever built. So that sounds really impressive. It's mammoth. It's huge. But, you know, if you were to go on Shark Tank, you'd probably hear a little bit of so what? Like, okay, yeah, okay, congratulations, aircraft project manager. You completed the thing, probably a little bit over schedule. And even if it was on schedule, would it have actually been viable? Who knows? Brenda's making a good point there in the chat. We're still talking about it today. So is there zero benefit? Probably not to Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes lives on now in perpetuity and in the imagination of air travel and air superiority. But if you were the sponsor of that, and by sponsor I mean the government whose funds were being used to make sure this thing got built, it's a tough question. And so One of the things that we want to talk about today is that at the end of the day, projects are about value for investment. Is your project even worth it? And these are questions that usually we haven't been confronted with in our profession as project leaders, project managers, product owners, scrum masters, project coordinators. We usually just assume that there's somebody else who's responsible and accountable for that. And yet, the profession is evolving. The expectation of our roles and leading and driving and steering and shepherding projects is expanding. The 7th edition of the PMBOK Guide offered some core project management principles, focusing on value being one of them, saying that the value is the ultimate indicator of project success. You can be on budget, on schedule, on scope for something that nobody cares about. I've been there. I've built multiple in the software industry where I got my start. I built multiple products that were classified as shelfware because they just sat on the shelf. And yeah, I got paid. I did a good job. But did I have the impact that I could have had? And these are the questions I've been asking myself, and I've been asking a lot of colleagues. And so here's what I want to challenge us to think about is, what could we contribute to the project value equation? What could we contribute to the yes or no decisions? How might we drive the impact that the sponsors are hoping to have, regardless of what our role is, what our seniority is? And so to help do that, we're going to cover 3 concrete scenarios. We're going to talk about the project proposal. How did you get this thing approved in the first place? Or was it done so before you showed up? Okay, that's great. But maybe sometimes your boss is asking you to help it get approved. They don't know projects. You know projects. Can you help me get this project approved? I don't. Is that my job? Well, it is if I want it to be part of your job for the next 3 months while we try to get this thing approved. Then the other scenario is scope creep. There was a business proposition, a business value case that was made, and then things just started like creeping and expanding and growing unintentionally, unsupervised, and it's driving us crazy. And then the third scenario is the showstoppers, where it's not merely about the scope being a problem, it's about all the other things being a problem. We're going to explore these 3 scenarios in 3 different industries. We've got our the most common example you might think of as a corporate example, especially if we're talking about value for investment. You're like, well, it's easy, ROI, cash in, cash out. And yet that's only one scenario. Many of us work in nonprofit worlds, and we work in the social sector or NGOs. And then several of us in the community and in the Project Management Institute membership work in government projects. And sometimes we work for corporations that contract to the government or corporations that serve nonprofit missions. And so how does the value equation fit there? And we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of impact, because not only is it about the where you are, but it's about what we're trying to achieve. And so the first one is obviously about money. More revenue, less cost. More revenue, less cost. And that saving costs is about financial performance. We can measure it with ROI, NPV, IRR, payback period. Those are just some normal financial calculations. It's pretty standard. And in many cases, that's important for all 3 of those industries. All 3 of those industries need cost savings. We got budgets to be very responsible with. And yet another metric of success, another kind of impact, would be around organizational mechanics. Maybe we have a project that's about improving productivity or improving quality or stability of a service or a product. And so there are a number of operational KPIs that are out there. What's our our throughput, our defect rate, our uptime. And that's a way we could measure impact that isn't strictly financial, but it can still be measured. And then finally, if it's not about money, if it's not about mechanics, it might be about the mission. These are more like soft benefits. The nonprofit isn't the only one that cares about their respective mission, whether it's saving the climate or curing homelessness or continuing the fight against slavery across the world. We still measure it. We still measure it. Maybe it's the number of people served or the tons of carbon removed from the atmosphere. We can still measure the impact our projects have, whether it's a money business proposition, a mechanics business project proposition, or a mission project proposition. So I'm curious, in the meeting tonight, who do we have? If you want to tell me kind of in the chat window, what industry are you in and what kind of a project are you working on? Give us a taste. And in the room there at Purdue, tell us a little bit about, maybe let's hear from two people. What's in the project that you're working on right now that maybe fits these at least somewhat?
Kevin Hawkins. I work at CAI. We partner with Lilly, and I'm currently working on a project to build a brand new gene and cell therapy plant in Lebanon, Indiana.
A new, what kind of plant?
Gene and cell therapy. So there'll be literally custom drugs made for people. People have special types of cancers or maybe a liver disease or something like that. Maybe there's only 200 people in the world that need that particular drug. We will take people's DNA and we'll take that DNA from them. We'll find enough people that match to make a batch that's profitable, and we'll make that batch of drugs for those people.
Love it. And it's a facility that that you're particularly charged with putting together?
There's cell and gene therapy is where everything's going in the pharmaceutical industry. It's custom level drugs for people to address their issue, instead of trying to do a shotgun approach where everyone just takes a big drug and, oh, we hope it works for 70%. We want it to work. We want 100% effectiveness.
Love it. Love it so much. And so there's an example, ladies and gentlemen, of a kind of project that has both a money proposition as well as a mission proposition.
We want to make people's lives better.
Absolutely. And yet it still needs to be economically viable, because if it isn't, then we won't have a sustained impact on the mission. So there's kind of that dual benefit, or some people call it the triple bottom line. Also, we got Abe, who's calling out working in fintech, doing software implementations. And I imagine, Abe, that some of those are net new products that are able to generate revenue, but they might be internal solutions that save money. Somebody else at Purdue?
Another volunteer, please. Yes, ma'am.
So I came from Ohio. This is the first presentation that acknowledges nonprofit and government, which is my background.
All right.
As a project manager, I could go on forever how hard that is, but I'm currently serving on sustaining the future at Department of Health, and just trying to even have language to educate how to think, to lower your cost, improve your deliverables, and
Yeah.
mission. It's not a conversation that is in that culture yet. I think it's getting there, but it's slow moving, not nearly as impactful as what you were talking about. But it touches a lot of people if we can do it better. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, I married into an MPH, public health professional. She talks a lot about outcomes at scale and how do we sustain them and how do we track them and what are the investments that we're making to make that happen. So that's another one where that can be very mission oriented. But you know what? If we can't produce services, whether it's managing grants or whether it's tracking the number of patients that are being served, or number of mental health beds we have in a particular district. Those are operational metrics to some degree. Also, Gary says they're working on a DoD material management system. And so that sounds like a government project that has an operational objective, which is to manage internal resources more efficiently, more effectively. And we got a couple of others out here. Here we go. Let's go with Brittany. Brittany in the chat is talking about the corporate industry where there's a platform modernization. Modernization for internal infrastructure could be about saving costs. It could be about improving productivity. It could be about generating new sales. There's all of these are options that we want to consider. We want to be able to take a look at it. And you'll notice that whether it's the corporate world, the nonprofit world, the government world, sometimes your industry does not determine your project goal. Your industry gives it a little bit of color, but you can have a project goal about saving costs that's in a nonprofit world, or you can have a mission metric. Arguably, the social media crew, they like to say that they're connecting the world and they're helping people find their long-term mates for only a stupid amount of money every month. So even the corporate people, Silicon Valley is one of my favorite sitcoms. If you haven't seen it, it makes fun of Silicon Valley people who think they're really saving the world. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to keep going and see what begins to unpack. So the first stage of the project lifecycle is initiation, getting it started, getting it proved. Well, how do we communicate whether our project is worth it? Because our boss, our sponsor may not be able to, or many times we work for contracting companies that need to sell to a sponsor that has budget. And we have a contractor, buyer-seller relationship. And many times they're going to ask us as project professionals, how would you make the pitch? How would you make the case? So sometimes it's helpful as project professionals for us to go to the experts. And project pitches are fundamentally about sales. And one of my favorite sales books of all time is by Daniel Pink. Some of you may remember Daniel Pink is an author of the book called Drive, where he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as the new management operating system for motivating people. This book is pretty interesting too. It was the one that he released directly after Drive. And in there, he makes the case that everyone is in sales. Quick show of hands over in Purdue. How many people are actively employed at the moment or have ever been employed in their lifetime? Quick show of hands. Anybody online, give us a kind of a thumbs up if you've ever been employed or maybe even actively employed at the moment. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. Congratulations, you're a successful salesperson. Because that's all it takes, is being at the right place at the right time to make the case for what you have to offer being worth the compensation, the return, the investment being made by the other party. We're all in sales. Have you ever been in a long-term life partner relationship? Congratulations, you're in sales. Have you ever convinced a friend to go out on a limb with you on a multi-family vacation in Europe where you spent way more than you were supposed to? And you left a little bit frustrated. Not that that's actually happened at all. Congratulations, you're in sales because you convinced them to go along with you and share the costs. So there are three questions that are proposed. And whenever we're trying to make the case for a new project, the first question is, what do we want them to know about this project? When we're talking about it, when we're sharing the information about it, what do we want them to feel? So we might want them to know the intended benefit, the intended costs. Okay. But we also want them to feel either inspired by a mission objective or maybe feel intelligent and rational for an operational objective, or to feel like excited, energized by a financial objective. And then what do you want them to do? Sometimes all we need is feedback. We don't need people to give their verbal support because they're not in a position of influence. Sometimes I just need some thoughts, ideas about the plan, or sometimes I do need a vote. Can I look forward to your support when we go in front of the portfolio committee? Now, Dan Pink offers several pitches around doing this, and we're going to be looking at one of them today, the email subject pitch. Could you pitch your project in the subject line of an email? Whatever it is. So a couple of examples here. Your subject, so 2 tips. One, your subject line, if you were to send an email about your project and you want to make sure that it just captures you, it turns out there's an entire profession around copywriting email subject lines. Email marketing is a thing. People know how to create one-liners. And so this example in the book, one of the things you might want to be is useful in your email pitch, which is, hey, I found the best and cheapest photocopier. That's very useful, best and cheapest. Or it can be mysteriously intriguing. I just discovered a photocopying breakthrough. And now aren't you intrigued enough to click open that email? But you probably don't want to be both useful and intriguing by saying that this specific model is a photocopy breakthrough. Now it sounds like sales. So there's some really good material out there. There's some good information out there about how to craft your project one-liner. And we're going to borrow some of those ideas right now. We're going to take a look at what a project pitch might look like. It might look like taking a look at, well, let's see, how am I doing this? Here we go. Okay. What are the resources we are going to expend in order to get a specific benefit? That's the template that we're going to play with tonight. If this template is something that can get you to think more clearly about, number one, what are you asking for? What do you want the sponsors to provide? And number two, what is it that this project is intended to do? Not just build, or work, but what is the impact we are trying to do? If that's all we're doing with this template, you've already elevated your project practice beyond I run projects to I'm saving lives with the latest in gene therapy products and facilities, or I'm helping improve healthcare outcomes in my district by making sure that we have an efficient operation at headquarters. So tapping into that bottom line is what we're talking about. And one example I have is a partner that my company works with called Friend of Trees. We run a lot of workshops that with projects and leaders, and we tend to use a lot of flip charts and a lot of handouts. And so we try to offset that carbon impact by our partnership with Friends of Trees. And so what would it look like if they were to take a look at a particular set of projects? Well, one financial project they would care about might be a fundraiser. And the project manager for that fundraiser might say, hey, CEO, I need 30 volunteers to raise $3.5 million. That's our average annual operating budget. It's fundraising season. It's getting to be that time of the year. And I need 30 of the volunteers. I know we've got 50 on the roster, but I need over half of them if you want me to complete the fundraiser. So we have a targeted benefit, a numerical benefit, and an ask for the resource. Well, what if it wasn't a financial request? What if it was more about mechanics? Well, I might be the internal operations leader at this small nonprofit, and I might need a customer relationship management solution because I've been doing everything in Microsoft Excel. I need something. Well, you could check out HubSpot. That'll run you, but then you got to install. You got to install the equipment. Like, do we have computers that can use this thing? I did some homework, boss. It's $100K, but if we do that, we can double our volunteer base. And if we double our volunteer base and it takes me 30 volunteers to raise 3.5 million, maybe next year we get to 4 million and this thing's paid for itself. And then finally, well, they're about trees. Where's the mission? Well, they run several events every year where local volunteers plant trees. And so if you just ask them, how many trees? 40,000 every year. Okay. What's your operating budget? 2.5 million. We raised 3.5, but we only spend 2.5. Great. That sounds like about $65 a tree. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So how much do you need for the next event in that community to plant 100 trees? Does 7K sound right? Yeah. 7K, maybe a couple dozen volunteers. Yeah, that'll do it. And now we have a pitch. So this is what we're looking at as far as telling the story. And telling the story in your project one-liner is already going to set you apart, because every other project manager that you're working with doesn't do this. They're not able to put those two things together in such a compact framework. And I know, immediately, some of you are like, but Jesse, you don't understand. I couldn't possibly do that because of some very legitimate concerns. For example, this is not my job. I don't know the businesses. I am not entering my map. I don't know the business dynamics here. How am I supposed to, why should I do this if they're the ones ultimately accountable for the investment? The answer is they don't know how. I can't tell you how many times projects get approved by senior executives just because they want it. There isn't a business case document floating around. It's like, oh, we got to do this. Why? Because, we got to. Okay. How do we know whether it's successful? If it's done, was it the right thing to do? Yes, because I decided. What if you're wrong? I'm never wrong until I get fired next year for choosing the wrong investment. So now you're not only powering the project, you're helping to steer it. And this is one way we talked about. The mission for this chapter is to help you get from where you are in your career to where you want to be. One way is to upgrade your impact by moving beyond the powering of a project as a project manager to steering it in the right direction. But Jesse, you don't understand. The finance and compliance teams, they care about different things. So if I do the money pitch, it won't resonate with the compliance people, and then vice versa. Well, maybe you can explore how the two of them go together. What is the cost of compliance? What about the cost efficiencies that come from compliance? Now, we might be able to see how they come together. And also, you might tailor the pitch depending on your audience. You could have a one-liner for one audience and a different one-liner for the other audience. And then you might, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I'm concerned though, because we don't have a business case. It's just the boss says we have to do it. Or the CEO says it has to be done. Okay, why are they saying that? I don't know. Well, if you don't know, why do you expect any of your stakeholders to buy into the project you're about to roll out? Just because the CEO said so? Well, they've got so many other things. What is the method behind the madness? What's the benefit behind the mandate? And if you can do that, if you can capture that, if you can start being the voice of the CEO on the ground, you're going to get heard. People are going to notice. But Jesse, our team is all internal employees. We don't calculate costs. I don't know what that number is. Okay, but you do know how many people you have, and you do know what amount of their capacity they're going to be asked to use for how long. And so 50% of a 5-person team for 5 months. Now, I know that's 5 times 5 is 25 times 50. That's 12.5 FTEs. That's a number. Would you like to use half of this team's capacity for the next year for this project, boss? It's really going to take that much? Yeah, it is. That means half of everything we do this year is just this project. Is that okay? Oh, let me think about that. I didn't realize it until you said it. So, number one, when it comes to proposals, consider trying the project pitch, your one-liner, and maybe read a couple of sales books about how to tell this story in a way that resonates. Let's move on to number 2, scope creep. Gotta love the scope creep. Okay, in the chat window, and over in Purdue, why is scope creep problematic? Arguably, scope creep could be a good thing because it means you're getting some attention. Arguably, it could mean people are listening to you. That hey, Gary's working on that really cool material management system. You know what we should add fries with that. Yeah, that's what we should do. So who's got some thoughts there, Purdue, as to why scope creep? What are the consequences of scope creep?
Blow the schedule.
Love it.
Blow the schedule.
That's right. Blow the schedule, and sometimes without approval, right? So, what if it's the project is we're going to Mars? Okay, well now we got to add additional scope to make sure people don't die when we go to Mars. Wait a second, you didn't say people had to survive the. So we're not going to do that for another 5 years. Well, that's okay because there's no rush to get to Mars. So it could blow the schedule and be a problem, or it could blow the schedule and not be a problem. It's kind of iffy. Over here, increased costs. Yes, more work equals more money, which is a problem without approval. There's a term. There's a fancy term that people learn in law school for when you spend money on things that was not approved. It's called embezzlement. So that's a good one, Gary. And then
Want to run it from the row here?
yep.
And scope creep also include in the effort a person has to put, like it is something which we are getting from the client, but from the resource point need to do a lot more requirement gathering, more effort need to be put, or more resources need to be deviated to that scope creep part. So yeah, extra work.
Yeah, here's one. I'm going to call it gold plating.
Yeah.
Which is when the people performing the project start overruling the sponsor's vision by saying, no, that's not right. No, because we also need to do this and we also need to do that. It's my professional opinion as an expert in this area, but whatever you do, don't tell anybody because then they won't approve of your unilateral will imposing upon the person who's spending the money. And so that's a problem because now we have a conflict of vision and a conflict of arguably of authority and what needs to be done. So we got looking through here in the chat window. Angela talking about requirements not defined up front. Folks beginning to move forward without knowing all the impacts and impacted areas. They look great on PowerPoint, but it's not realistic when initially agreed upon, causing scope creep. Sometimes that's scope creep. Sometimes it's really just, this is harder than we thought. It's not so much that the goal has changed or the scope has changed as it is the effort is now more understood. And we're going to talk about that too. Because that is also a problem. So 3 kind of scenarios here, and I hope you see what we're going for. Some perspective here. The PMI lexicon defines scope creep as the uncontrolled expansion of product or project scope without adjustments to time, cost, and resources. So it's this uncontrolled explosion of the project where just more. And if we can make the change intentional, then it is more likely to be a valuable change. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how many times scope creep actually is a good business choice if it's not about creeping, but rather about intentional controlling. We want to make it so that, yeah, scope creep is bad, but what if we could make it so that scope change is good? Some of you may have heard this as integrated change control earlier in your career. What is the project value equation for that? And so let's take a look. We're gonna, here's two questions. When it comes to change, scope change, does the ROI of the change match the original proposal? That is to say, if you have a financial investment, let's say I'm putting money into a savings bond and it yields a 5% return, and then suddenly the government comes back and says, yeah, you're not going to be able to get that money out for another year, and it's not going to add any additional interest return. I'd have a problem with that because it's not matching the original ROI. Or is it at least adding a positive boost to the business case, to the value proposition? So the change needs to be assessed on its own merits. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. First, there's a financial change. So if we were to calculate good old-fashioned ROI, gain minus cost over cost, what is the delta? What is the change request? What is the cost that we are going to incur of additional resources, additional headcount, additional capacity, versus the increased gain that this scope creep would offer? And if it's not financial, well, what if it's more general? And we can start asking, what is the percent increase in cost versus the percent increase in gain? And maybe we take a look at a corporate example. I worked with an insurance company a couple years ago, 100-year-old insurance company, and they wanted to be more innovative. They wanted to be more creative. They wanted to modernize. They wanted to shed some of their old generational habits. And so one of the first projects that they were taking a look at was a new offering for the small to medium business marketplace. And so that offering had a pitch, which is, if we spend $25 million to launch this new offering, it'll give us access to $1 billion market. And we only need 10% market share. 10% of $1 billion is 100 million. And that's 4 times the 25 million we will have invested. That sounds great, Jesse. I approve your project. Go forth and build this new offering and make some money. Awesome. 6 months later, dun, 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 somebody, I got a cool idea, says my new boss. If we also include the Chamber of Commerce, we'll probably be able to increase our conversion from only 10% market share to maybe more like 11% market share. Yeah. Jesse, how about you go baseline your project and add that in there? Go ahead. Like, hold on there. That's, it's actually going to cost us another $13 million. Or maybe more like $15 million. And that extra 1% market share you're bragging about, it's a $10 million value. You're asking me to spend more money than the money we would get with your cool little idea. By the way, career tip, never talk to your boss that way. Your cool little idea. Now, this change request has a big fat maybe on it. Of course, it's a good idea to engage a trade association like the Chamber of Commerce. But is it worth the money right now? Likewise, that insurance company, they're wanting to improve their operations. So there's like, okay, let's take a look at our underwriting policy. Let me just I get a little excited with my toy. If we change our underwriting policies, we can expect to get some real operational benefit. I'm hoping that maybe 25% of our team's capacity would be all that's needed to boost the productivity of the underwriting team by 25%. If we just roll out new policies, we won't be having to look in the wrong place for this, and maybe do a little bit of knowledge management. So the payback period is only 1 year. Sounds good. I approve that project. That sounds very good management. I approve that initiative. 6 months later, we come back. If we also add risk into this, the risk management policies, that'll avoid even more duplication. Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Can I just go? Can I just go? Can I just go? Hold on. What's that going to cost? What's that going to get? And so now we have to go do the homework. And as a project professional, I believe that this is what's needed. It wasn't in the original requirements because they weren't involved, but now that they are, we could get another 10% increase in productivity. It's just going to cost us twice as much effort. So that's a negative ROI. Again, probably not worth it. But it's just so agitating that we're not doing this while we're doing the other thing. Oh, I know. It's a hard sell. Well, okay. What about insurance? Do we really do insurance? Well, do we have a mission? Do we have something? Well, the human resources might say that they do. The chief people officer says, we need to launch a DEIB office. It's hugely important. It's important to who we are as a company. We're an insurance company. We make money. Yes, but it's important in who we are. How? Well, if we launch this office, probably cost $500,000 because we got to staff up the office. We have to have a leader, a couple of staffers, probably need to have contracting, some expenditure budgets. But if we do it, I know we'll double our employee engagement. Oh, okay, now we're talking. That's something that will change the tenor of the work environment at this company. That is a positive impact on the human condition at our company. Let's go for it. Let's go. So we're building out this office. 6 months later, conversation starts happening. You know what we could do? We could reach out into the industry. We could give more of our people opportunities to speak at PMI events, to volunteer at PMI events. It'll turn into a growth opportunity. And now we're getting a sense of belonging in in their respective professions, and particularly in the industry we're in insurance. Now they can see that we value their contributions to their profession and to the industry as a whole. This is going to have a real impact on the sense of the workplace environment. Okay, so what's that going to cost me? And what's that going to get us? Well, it's a mission. We don't measure these things. Yes, we do. We do measure these things. What if we did do that industry outreach? We did some marketing campaigns. We created some collateral, and it took $200,000 to do it. But we increased engagement even more, and we now had a new target of increasing retention. And because we're doing a lot of marketing efforts, we're starting to work with the marketing department about boosting our brand. This is now a threefold benefit. This one looks like it's worth the upgrade. It's worth the scope change request. So that's what we're looking at with scope creep. Can your one-liner describe the impact of a change and the cost of a change? If it can, it might be worth doing. If it can't, now you've got the language where leaders can say, no, not right now. We got one more very quickly. I know we're coming up on time. We got one more to talk about: showstoppers. This is when it's not about the scope change. This is just bad news. Stop me if you've ever heard this one before. You got a roadblock, a speed bump, a plot twist, project properly funded, properly staffed, properly planned, and then something goes wrong. One of your people resigns. The contractor goes out of business. Something. And as a result, your contingency reserve runs dry. And as a result of that, it's not enough. Eventually, your management reserve starts getting tapped in, and now that's running dry. And now we got to go back for more resources, more people, more money. In the chat window, over in Purdue, I'm looking for one example of a showstopper that threatened the very viability of your project.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one. I actually am a professor at Purdue, and Purdue and IU split from IUPUI to IU Indianapolis and Purdue Indianapolis. And because of the marketing kind of getting a little bit off, we had to pause our undergraduate project management education plan a bit, which decreases the amount of income that we had, but it also doesn't really impact our mission the way that we would like. So, showstopper.
So the showstopper was the marketplace was confused by the flip.
Yeah, well, the split itself was probably the showstopper, but what the problem is in terms of how it was actually handled. So our stakeholders, being our students and our didn't really know about our programs because there was no communication that had been in years before.
Yeah. Has that ever happened to anybody? Can I get if that's ever happened to you as well, where stakeholders are freaked out over in Purdue or in online, just everybody put out, yeah, me too. All right, online, I'm taking a look. Angela, a couple of people are talking. Sarah, she got the me too. Yeah, sometimes that vendor goes out of business. Sometimes your team lead resigns. Whatever it is, it's a curveball, a showstopper, a speed bump, a plot twist. What do we want to do about that? Well, people are going to react. Be ready for it. It just happens. But as they're reacting, you can help frame the story, frame the narrative about what this means. Because at the end of the day, never waste a crisis. When you have a crisis, it really forces people to make some tough choices. And we got our final example here, where we're going to talk about a government scenario. The president has ordered several executive orders, including Memorandum 2131. I'm working with an IT group that's working on this. It's a massive project that is asking every government agency to update their cybersecurity policies. Okay, it's a massive project, multiple teams, multiple agencies. Now, what if you work at agency ABC? Well, one of those money kind of considerations would be the last ransomware attack cost us $10 million to fix. I don't want to be the executive that has to deal with that. I'll spend 5 times that much just to not to be the next person. $10 million penalty, 5x willing to spend. The mechanics, let's use 5% of our budget to accelerate our cyber incident response time by 25%. That sounds like super management awesomeness right there. And then the mission. Well, the mission might be that if the Small Business Administration is ever shut down from cyber attacks, small businesses get hurt, and that's the lifeblood of our country. We can do math on that, but it's really about the American dream. We need to protect that, no matter the cost. Well, so then what's the measurement on the impact of this disaster? Well, boss, I know you said you were willing to go up to 50 million, but to cover 90% of our risk, that was our goal. Looks like we're going to be more like 75. Tech lead quit, vendor went out of business, and the technology is way more harder than we thought it was going to be. It's going to be twice, it's going to be 50% increase in budget. Or, hey, remember we were going to accelerate response rates by 5%? Well, to hit that goal, we got to double it. If we want to hit that goal this year, in the fiscal year, we got it. I'm sorry, boss, but plot twist, landmine, curveball. It's just life. It's reality. And what makes this hard, and then finally, the mission, to get 50% adoption across this agency. Like if we want to secure 50% of this, 50% of this agency, we're going to need another $1 million in contractors. And you just never really know what the response to this is going to be. Because at the end of the day, our job is an advisor to someone who makes this decision. So it might be, yes, it's still worth it to pay even more money so that I'm not the one that has to deal with the risk side of not being done. Or no, we don't have that kind of money. I can't double the budget. Just do what you can with what you got. Thank you for the information. I appreciate the reality of the situation. We're only going to get a little bit of that incident response rate. Fine. Let's take the win that we can get instead of worrying about the original goal. Or yes, another $1 million. I have some discretionary money. Let me do some maneuvering to make it happen. The reason this is hard is because we are trying to making a pitch without benefits is harder. Scope creep is actually an easier sell than plot twists, landmines, and curveballs, because there's an upside that comes with the scope creep, as opposed to it's just harder all of a sudden. Same goal, same impact, more ask. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I wanted to share with you today. Wanted to share with you the idea that no matter the industry, there are 3 kinds of impact your project could possibly be having, either directly or indirectly. It's money, the mechanics, and the mission. And every project is in the business of being worth the money being spent. And it's up to us maybe to use some tips from sales. It's also up to us to be able to calculate what's the positive impact and what's the new ask that we're going for. I got a promise to send out to those of you who want some of the PDF copy of this. It'll be sent out. And those of you who are in Purdue, if you want to screenshot right now this QR code, this will take you to our homepage where you'll be invited to join a mailing list, where you'll get even more tips and templates. Those of you who want that can online, you can either use your phone to scan this or just go to fuelinnovation.com. Join the mailing list. I would love to get your feedback on this. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Jesse, how about we give you a bit of a break here? You willing to come back for some Q&A?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Okay,
For
so
now?
leave the QR code up on the screen for a little bit, give people a chance to get up here. We're going to go into our segue for our volunteer mini podcast, and I'll come back to you in about 3 or 4 minutes.
All right.
That's fine. Very good. Everybody, join me in acknowledging Jesse Kuhn. All right, and for this month's Volunteer of the Month mini podcast, I'd like to introduce someone who's already been a big part of this session and helping us prepare for it, Dr. Katrina Reed Hughes. Dr. Hughes or Dr. Come on up, and you can see, I think, on camera and for the audience here as well. So this is an opportunity for us to get to know a little bit about you, the PMI volunteer. And I understand you're a director of the, I believe it's known as the Academic Outreach arm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things, 2 big things that we really want to do is to grow the pipeline of future project managers. But we also want to be able to get back and have an impact on the students that are all across central Indiana and beyond, really, so that they have mentors, these programs such as this. So our goal is to connect with not just our Purdue and IU students, but also connect with Ball State, Butler, Notre Dame, all of those schools. But we have to connect with whoever is hosting their PM education.
Wow. So as director of this, you must have like a staff of hundreds or, okay.
I do not.
What do you do in terms of, what type of help would you like with this mission?
Well, one thing I would really like is for someone's, multiple would be great, who has a passion for that population. I know that a lot of us did not go to, I went straight through school for 4 degrees, so it's not me, but a lot of people did not go through school all at once. And may not have had the mentors to help kind of guide them through that process. So I want someone first and foremost who shares that passion for students, generally speaking.
Okay.
And then I want someone who breathes and is willing to work.
Okay, good. We're knocking them right off there.
Someone who has the capacity to really engage. I am really open to all ideas. I kind of date ideas. I don't marry them when I first have them. So that way we can, kind of put together some other type of arrangement. So I'm really looking for people with passion and knowledge and time.
Great. And if said people were interested online or in the room, how should they reach you?
Well, you can reach me at academic@tmicic.org. That's the best way to reach me.
Okay, great. Do you volunteer for other things as well, perchance?
Well, I do, as a professor, a large part of what I do is service. And so I volunteer all over the campus, but I was also recently appointed to a director of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so that's another place where you work when you're not really supposed to. So, but I love it.
That's terrific. Well, thank you much. You helped us with this room, this facility.
Oh my goodness. Oh goodness, we are project managers. Let's just give ourselves.
Dr. K, everybody, thank you very much. All righty, let's check to see if Jesse Fuel has had a chance to refuel himself and get back online here. Did anybody who wanted to get this snapshot, get that snapshot from, okay, a thumbs up from at least, way back in the room, okay. Very good for that. What I'd like to do is we have some would you rather questions. We've got some cat meme stuff, or frankly, let's do some Q&A because we didn't have the opportunity to do that. So we're going to start with that piece here. So I'm going to queue up either questions online. Go ahead and start asking your questions in the chat, and we'll queue them up for sharing there. There's Jesse. Or in the room, of course, you guys. I'm going to go to you guys with hands up. I do want to provide a certificate of appreciation to Jesse, though. We have an online certificate of appreciation. I think we can show on the screen. There we go, our certificate of appreciation, which we'll email to you.
I graciously, metaphorically received the certificate.
We're glad you accept metaphoricals, so thank you much. Jesse, is that an okay way set up here? Let's get to some Q&A online in the room. You good with that? Before I start?
Yeah, let's talk shop.
Okay, talk shop. Who in the room got a question? Don't make me look bad, or I have to call in the new person because you'll. Okay, Mark in the back, loud, project.
Okay, I'll project. I'll use my MC voice. Jared, I know PMI has been pushing us to go from being project managers to project leaders. I think a lot of what you talked about tonight kind of aligns with that. Can you maybe clarify kind of where PMI is driving, where you're driving, and where they kind of compare and contrast?
Yeah, I would love to offer a little bit of additional thought on this. Gonna hop over to another one of these things. So how many of you have heard of the PMI talent triangle? Bum, ba, da, bum. Quick show of hands. Anybody online with a thumb?
Acknowledgement to the room.
Yeah, right. So, so the PMI talent triangle is a core expectation for anyone that is evolving in their growth in the profession, and I believe this was in 2017 when the first one was rolled out, and you'll see that there were 3 core categories of what we were expected to do, and you'll see the big red pillar there, leadership, was defined as literally 1/3 of the job in 2017, 7 years ago. Then in 2021, there was a revision of that said that technical project management is about a number of different considerations, including ways of working. It may be more than just about scope, schedule, cost. It might be about building a team that can perform any project. And then power skills were meant to include not just leadership, but also communication and relationship building, arguably parts of leadership. And then business acumen was another way to frame the strategic and business management thing. But you see, those power skills, it's still there around communication. And the business acumen about being able to tell the story, this is not new. This has been a conversation for the better part of a decade about what does it mean to be a project professional in a marketplace or at a place where my boss can't tell the story. My boss can't get it approved. And the sponsor's having difficulty getting votes on the committee. Or my sales team for my small company is wondering why they can't ever win one of these competitive bids for a large project. And I'm there. I have a professional opportunity to contribute to this. So I would say that this isn't something that PMI is pushing. Now, granted, the seventh edition of the PMBOK guide, we mentioned that focus on value was a reflection of this in 2021 when it was launched. It wasn't so much that PMI was saying, okay, we're now going to move you up the value chain. We're going to drag you kicking and screaming to higher impact and higher opportunity in your career. It was more a reflection of the expectation. If your organizations are hiring project people, they might not need help with more than just scope, schedule, cost.
Good. Next question. We're looking for questions online as well. And remember, folks, that while Jesse has the certificate of appreciation, which of course is highly valued, asking good questions is another way the speakers do get paid. So this is a good opportunity for you guys to contribute a bit. Another
All
question.
right. So Brenda's got a question here in the chat, and I'll post it here. Sometimes there are projects that just shouldn't be done. How would you professionally suggest its cancellation? So, yeah, okay. One, do the math. Just talk about, like, is this rational? Show the numbers. If the numbers tell a story that it's just not worth doing, now we've shifted it to an irrational conversation. So we do the math, and it reveals it's not about the numbers. If they're still saying, no, we got to go, we have to do this, then you start, okay, but why? Because we have to. Another one might be to ask, what's at risk? This is one of those questions I learned when I went through executive coach training. And this is what a lot of executive coaches will ask senior executives. And if you want to demonstrate yourself as a power player, throw this question in your next meeting. When someone is like, okay, all right, I understand you have some convictions about this. What's at risk here? And it'll challenge them to say, well, I don't want to be the person who gets hit with a cyber attack on my watch, because I know it'll cost me my job. Oh, okay, so this is about you. Again, pro tip, don't say that in public. Do that in a one-on-one setting. But at the end of the day, there's two halves of the brain. There's the rational half and the irrational half. And one of the things that we learned, actually, the #1 TED Talk of all time, we just saw a really great TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and it's called Start With Why. And what he makes the point is that nobody buys what you do. Nobody buys the numbers. They buy with their hearts. People have already made up their mind whether they want you in the job. There's just something about her that feels like she's the power player we need right now. She has half the years of experience than the other person. Yeah, but there's something there. Okay, well then how can you justify that? Oh, well, let's take out the numbers and talk about how this person actually has more credentials. Likewise, when it comes to a project, it might be less about the numbers and it might be more about what it represents. And you might find that that's some of the conversation that you need to have. So that's a good question, Brenda. And Sarah's question in the chat is also very similar. How do you combat a showstopper whose impact or decision is absolute, like someone with political power and authority? It's similar to some degree. Let me add this in. This one, a really good example would be layoffs. That's a project. Sometimes it's a project that only takes a matter of weeks, and the negative impact on some far outweighs the positive impact on others as far as keeping an enterprise going. And one way to do it is to quit first. Take control over your destiny, over your situation. I mean, from a career perspective, that's the one tool in the toolbox I would offer. But sometimes here's one. There was, when the healthcare.gov first rolled out the ACA, Affordable Care Act, and healthcare.gov, the team, the agency was about halfway through building out the service and the website where people could get to the service, and then the Supreme Court declared the mandate to be unconstitutional. That's a good time for you to stop working on a project when it's now literally illegal. There's nothing you can do. So it's just, sometimes there's the unavoidable thing in life, and you just roll with those punches. Quick count of three. Anybody in the room, anybody online ever had to roll with the punches? Say me too. 1, 2, 3.
Me too.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Other thoughts in how about at Purdue?
Yes, sir.
I have a question about your experience with like major IT projects, maybe that had large budgets, big teams, and took a couple of years to deliver. Did you see that the scope creep was something that you saw over and over again in those types of projects that kind of motivated you to come up with your tool?
So this template and the techniques that what about I'm going to call them long tail projects, where it just keeps growing and growing. And in particular, you're asking about long tail IT projects. I worked on 2 of them. One of them was at NASA, and one was at the Department of Defense. And yes, scope creep is insidious. It's one of those things where over the long haul, and this thing where it's going to take more effort. The team's running into roadblocks. There's somebody that made the point earlier. One woman made the point that it feels like sometimes when the team is running into difficulties, maybe they're gold plating it, but maybe they're just responding to the latest scope creep. And it's hard sometimes to tell because we're all in this and we're on autopilot. There's a book by Ed Jordan called Death March, referring to these kinds of IT projects. So for NASA, the problem was we were over engineering. And that led to delays. and that led to cancellation in favor of a commercial product. And so that was one of those cases where we just got excited about our science project. And it was actually a science project, but we were trying to build flight control software that didn't need to be a science. It wasn't about, that wasn't the science project. And meanwhile, over at the Department of Defense, the management had a vision the staff could not understand. And so what they were wanting to do is they were wanting to do understand. And so as a result, we just spent lots of money because again, it was an existential project. It was where the management had this vision of it needs to be like this. And the staff that have been doing their job for 15, 20 years, like, I just don't understand that. And I never will. And you're the only one who does. And so we spent 3 years of government money just talking in circles about it. And I did the best. And so my job was to tell the truth. Their job was to make the wrong decision. It's their job. And at the end of the day, if I've done my job of telling the truth and I've given them at least a shot at seeing the light, then that's all we can do. You can take the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Our job is to take the horse to water. And that's and as we see here, it's not a new expectation over the last 7+ years. It just doesn't mean it's any easier.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Jesse Fuel for leading.
Thank you so much for inviting me from my private office. I hope to chat with you all on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. And I have a policy where I connect with anybody on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
This is where we have the guest speaker metaphorically in your instance here. Select the raffle winners from the tickets in the room.
Yeah.
We'll be doing that on your behalf. I'll hold it up here for you.
Yeah.
Kelly, will you do how many winners will we have today?
We're gonna have 2 winners in the room, and then we'll do a virtual winner. Our winners in the room will get these lovely IUPUI water bottles. Thank you, Dr. K. And you'll also receive a program voucher for one of our upcoming events. And then our online winner will win the voucher. So we'll get that over to you. So, just pick our winners here. Yes, we're gonna start with in the room. All right, 2330032. Winner. Congratulations. The second one. Okay, 2330029. Winner. Yeah. All right, and we will try to find an online winner here. Yeah. Okay. 4-3. Oh, just the last 2. 9-1. Yeah.
One must need to be present to win, Jesse. The online ones sometimes can take a bit. Should promote the raffle a little bit more in this session.
Okay, 694.
694. Matthew is online. All right. So he needs to send an email.
Us an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Matthew, you can send an email to
Info works.
info@pmicic.org.
Kelly, is there any after 8 o'clock in-person programming, networking?
I know everyone's been here for a while. The volunteer team will be here if you want to stick around and chat. We're gonna kind of wrap up here without any formal networking, but like I'll still be around if you want to chat. But we'll kind of conclude the program for tonight. And thank you all for being here and sticking it out with us. I hope you got some pizza and snacks. There's still some food back there if you want to take something. So appreciate it. Oh, yes.
Everyone has their partition code.
I believe everyone's got the parking code, but if no, if you need
May
it.
not need it.
The lots are all open, they've got the gates up.
Good.
Okay.
Oh,
Take
they
down
do.
on the registration table there, it might still be up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw something on top of Kelly's.
Thank you.
So basically what she said, we had plot twists and landmines,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff that happened before most of you showed up today.
Yeah.
So if you've got it in your hearts to show a little appreciation to the volunteers here who braved it. Because yeah, we could have shut down, right? Really lost our cool, but we didn't because we have great volunteers who know how to just stay focused on the goal and make sure we do what we can to achieve it. That's exactly what they did. So,
Great, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Safe travels home.
Survey's up here on the wall.
Thanks, Jesse. Jesse, I'll communicate with you over email, just a couple of retrospective questions. Like, what did you think went well with this? What do you think could have been better? Your